Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research based information that fits your family. We'll talk about the realities of being a parent and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of two littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator. And I'm so excited to be back for season 11. Oh, I always feel like when we take these breaks, it's just like, oh, it's been too long. So excited to be back this season. Had so much fun. Remember in season 10, we were talking all about kids and food with Dr. Lindy Buckingham Shutt. Had a blast, learned so much. And I'm prepared to learn a lot this season too. I feel like kind of a newbie on this topic, but that's okay. That's okay. As you maybe guessed from our episode title, we're going to be talking about finances. We're talking about money, kids, family, how we teach these things. And so, in order to provide some expertise and experience and all kinds of good stuff, we have a guest co host this season, one of my wonderful colleagues at Iowa State. And so, we have Dr. Suzanne Bartholomae.
Hello.
Hey, I'm so glad to have you on this season, Suzanne. We're excited. You got a lot of stuff. You know stuff.
Oh, well, you know how to get this stuff organized and outlined, so I'm really excited about it. Thank you
Oh,
so much for making money the topic for this season.
yes, and it is. It's one of these things we like maybe don't always think about as parents. I'll admit that, right? I think about the like guidance and discipline. I think about the kids and food, right? It's easy to kind of forget this as an important topic to talk with our kids about.
You're
So,
absolutely right. Yes,
mhm.
which is why lifting it up is just, warming my heart.
Oh, good.
Warming my heart.
Good. Well, and because I'm gonna say, let me tell everybody your credentials. Like some of the reasons, not all of them, some of the reasons we're so excited to have Suzanne on this season. So you're I know one of your roles is as a human sciences extension outreach state specialist. In other words, Suzanne provides the leadership at the across the state for our organization related to family finance education. You're also an associate professor in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies here at Iowa State. I say, and you're a parent, right? And you're a parent yourself. Like you got the credentials. We're excited you're here, but I mean, you can tell us like what you actually do, right? Those are like fancy titles and things. But tell us about your work. Tell us about things
Okay.
you're passionate about.
Thank you. All right. Well, yes, so I'm an associate professor in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies, and I'm in the major financial counseling and planning. So
Mhm.
I teach classes in that major, students who want to be financial planners or counselors. So that's what we're
Mhm.
training them to be. And then I also do research on financial issues, financial behavior,
Yes.
and so that's one part of my hat. One of the hats, two of the three hats that I wear, and then the big
You've got a few.
yeah, I got a couple, and so but the bigger hat is the extension and outreach, which is the community work with a team of wonderful educators like yourself
Mhm.
who are across the state of Iowa trying to enhance the financial security and well-being of, Iowans, and so I've been interested in the topic for, several decades. I have experienced my own financial stress and, mismanagement of money, and so hey, so they say research is personal, and so
Mm.
I'm just drawn to the topic to try and help people.
Oh, awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you here to share some of that, in a way that you're used to doing the education. You're used to helping make this kind of content that can feel out of reach for people or like, I guess I don't know, that you're gonna here to help us make it consumable, right? Give us a little reality, a little dose of that along with what we're doing. I was like, and you're a parent to a high schooler, I believe, right?
I am, yes, thank you. I have a
Yay.
single child, and so,
Mhm.
yep, all the
Oh.
mistakes are being made on her.
That's no, I'll say we do so many good things as of course at the science of parenting we believe there's more than one way. So, we're doing great things across the board. So, so excited to have you here and we're going to be digging in for our listeners and viewers throughout this season about money. And so today we're actually going to kind of talk about how we do that as parents. And so there's this term, right? Suzanne shared
Mhm.
all this really great like research and articles and like just such good stuff that I learned a lot from. And one of the terms that really is like what it we're doing as parents is this idea of financial socialization, right? And our listeners know I love to start with a definition. So will you give us a definition of this
I
term?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity. So financial socialization, and this is from Danis, who's up in Minnesota.
Ooh.
It is the process of acquiring and developing, and there's gonna be a long list of terms here, values, attitudes, standards, norms, knowledge, and behaviors that
Mm.
contribute to financial viability and individual well-being. So now that your listeners are ready to disconnect, let me tell you what it really means as a parent. And I
Mhm.
can call it financial socialization, and I also use the term like financial parenting, right?
Okay.
So there's 3 buckets where we're trying to get our children to financial independence so that when they
Mm.
leave the nest, they are financially secure and they have freedom of their choices. That's financial
Mm.
well-being. So that's our end goal. Okay. So let's all start where we know what our end goal is. But in
Yes.
terms of being able to be a financial parent and engage in this process of financial socialization, think about it in 3 buckets. You're going to try and influence your child's knowledge. And so what they know about the world in
Mm.
terms of finances, you're going to think about their skills and their behavior. So what are some of the um, skills that they need to exist in our economy and interacting with
Yes.
financial services? So things like numeracy and problem solving and that kind of thing.
Ooh.
And then finally, last but not least, the attitude and confidence that you develop in your child,
Ooh.
which is really a reflection, I think, of our as parents, what we model in the household, what we value, what we demonstrate to our children is going to come through in our child's attitudes and their confidence.
Mm.
And
That
so
makes sense.
so what you want, how you want, we know as parenting, like what you give is what you're going to get, right?
Mm.
In
Mhm.
terms of for
Right? Like
better or for worse, When I see
Yes.
that same expression I used to give to my, my little girl coming back at me, I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Right?
Good intention, right? Positive intent that we had in things.
Yeah.
And I like that breakdown of the 3 buckets, right? Like I love like a terminology, right? Like an academic, a formal definition, because I think that's like one way of looking at it that can add insight for us. But yeah, the other way is just like, okay, let's break this down. I like the idea of 3 buckets. Like, okay, these are things when I'm talking with my child about money that I can think about. And
Mhm.
I like the term financial parenting. I feel like that is like a little more transparent, like what we're doing. But this idea of socialization also resonated with me because a lot of the parenting literature talks about how parents are socialization agents. In other
Mm.
words, we teach our kids how to exist in the world. We're
Yeah.
socializing them. We're teaching them the like social norms, acceptable behavior, manners, right? We're like, that's
Right.
something that's a role of a parent. And so that made sense to me of like, yeah, that's a thing. That's a parenting skill we already develop for lots of areas. We just want to apply it specifically to like money and finances.
Right, and like you said, it's, something that's often overlooked, right?
Mm.
So we teach our children about a lot of different subjects, like you mentioned, and so this is just another one, which unfortunately, yes, it's another one,
Yeah.
along with manners, we do need to help them understand money
Mm.
and
Yes.
financial decision making.
There's a lot that goes into it. So I actually have a question for you. I love when we get the chance to share a little bit of our own reality. So by this definition, whether that's the 3 buckets or the formal definition, what are some of the things that you reflect on that you currently do that's financial parenting or financial socialization in your own life? What are some things that each of us do?
Okay. Well, thanks for that question. So, in the knowledge bucket, we definitely at our household have a lot of discussions with our daughter. This morning on the way to school, uh, she's going to be getting my 87-year-old aunt's used 20-year-old car. And so she had
Oh,
questions about insurance and also about ownership over, whose name is it in? Is it going to be in your name? And
yeah.
so that was an opportunity for a discussion, right, about liability
Mm.
insurance and
Yeah.
the difference between home insurance and auto insurance. So knowledge of what in terms of like it's because of the work I'm in, she may have an
Yes.
affinity to it as well, but we've talked about like the difference between savings and investing. So for example,
Mm.
she's gotten, a lot of our kids will get cash, right, for a
Like as a
holiday or a
gift.
birthday. And
Hmm.
so she had accumulated it at 5 years old. And it's like, you know what, it's time to teach her about about banking. And so I opened a savings
Yeah.
account, got her a debit card. She gets a statement every month. So that's increasing her knowledge, but then also in the skills attitude. But then it also hits that the skills and the attitude part, so that she
Yeah.
knows that banking and financial services and keeping our money safe is kind of a value that we have, and that we trust the institution that
Mm.
that we're not going to keep it underneath our bed.
Yes.
We're not going to
And
keep
you're
it in a
passing on
piggy bank, yes, but only for
yeah.
so long. Maybe for loose change.
Yes, well, and you're passing on, a value like so many other things we talk about in parenting. We all have values around money, like what it's
Yeah.
meant to be used for, how we like whether we save it, how we save it, where we save it. All those
And
things
what
are
we're saving
values that we
for,
have.
right? And
Yes,
we have
what we
what we're
save
saving for.
for. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. Another you used two terms earlier when we were kind of walking through this episode. You talked about explicit financial parenting versus implicit financial parenting. And that I saw that in some of the stuff that you sent and I was like,
Mhm.
that's important for us to like understand and reflect on as parents too. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So explicit socialization or parenting
Mhm.
versus implicit. So explicit is really that intentional, clear, obvious, whether it's a discussion or it's a teaching moment. That's
Mm.
that's how we engage in one type of socialization. And then the implicit is kind of the unspoken um, parenting that happens.
Mhm.
So it might be you're modeling behavior, but you're not talking about the behavior. It could be based on a communication that you're having with somebody in your household, right?
Yes.
Or a partner, and they're observing. You could be arguing about money, and so that's modeling. But it's not like, oh, I'm gonna. This is not a teachable. You don't think it's a teachable moment, but it actually is because,
But they're learning.
yeah, because they're learning. And so when we look at the research, the explicit financial socialization is really more significantly related or like
Mm.
more important to financial outcomes that we're looking for. So
Okay.
like, are you engaging in healthy financial behaviors like paying your credit card off
Mm.
in full, living within your means, those types of things that we say, okay, good job. You're you're financially healthy,
Yes.
versus the implicit isn't as strong. And
Mhm.
our family characteristics are going to make a big have an influence on the types of socialization that happens, right? So
Yes.
um there's some literature that says that higher income families are more they engage in more explicit financial socialization than maybe lower
Mm.
income families. Then
Mhm.
there's some gender differences, so that boys
Oh.
are exposed to more explicit financial socialization than girls are. So
Oh,
things to be
interesting.
cognizant of when it comes to socialization.
Yes, and even yeah, like these little biases that we can have, like, oh yeah, I've never thought about. Do I like across my son or my daughter? Do I talk with one more about something or the other? And so that's important for us to keep in mind that we that might be may or may not be a bias that we have.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
yes,
Exactly.
and so
Exactly.
I
And
can
so
actually think of at first I was like, do I financially socialize my children? But I do, and I actually have two examples I can share. And one is implicit and one is explicit. So I think like one of the areas that I'm probably doing some implicit like financial parenting is like when my kids join me when we go to like get our food. So we get our food at the grocery store locally. Whether you're going to like the food pantry, the gas station, right? Wherever you're getting your food. But when my kids go with me, the how I talk about what we're choosing, how I talk about why we don't buy something. And so thinking about that, I'm doing some implicit like, oh, we're not going to get that this time or oh, that's expensive or right? Like it might not be a
right.
conscious thing I'm doing. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the times it's just like, yeah, we see that mom stops to get coffee when she grabs this, right? That's implicit. That's like a modeling, whether I mean to teach them about that or not.
Yeah, yeah, and then they're watching
Yes.
you. Are you paying for it with cash? Are
Oh,
you paying for it with a
yes.
credit card? Are you going to the grocery store with a list? And are you sticking
Yes.
to the list? Are you
Ooh.
using coupons? Are you checking
Yes.
flyers before you go shopping? These are all modeling behaviors. Are you comparison shopping? Like, you
Mm.
stand for a minute and you look at the aisle of food, or you look at the shelves, um
Yes.
and maybe you talk out loud and say, "Hey, you know what? The stuff on the top shelves are a little more expensive than the bottom shelf."
Yes. Oh.
Or yeah, there's also, unit pricing. I love unit pricing.
Oh.
That's a great lesson. And
Oh.
that's
I'll say I
something.
feel like we can dig into that in some of our episodes on, like, the ages they're in. Let's talk about when
Yeah,
we can teach our kids that skill.
and that's
That's
something
coming.
actually that I've done with my husband has done with my daughter, where we'll be
Mm.
standing at the grocery store and he'd be like, "Well, tell me which is the better deal between this big
Mhm.
bag of this and this smaller bag of this."
Yes,
And
like,
then
percent.
she has to do the math, and so, like, numeracy is a big part of financial
Yeah, your
decisions,
math
and
skills.
so I know that sometimes as parents, we practice math with our kids, and, of course, hopefully, they're getting some good, training in their schools, but that's
Mhm.
numeracy skills, literacy skills, also it's built into a lot of financial decisions. So
Yes.
just doing puzzles and math, and a
Mhm.
lot of the parenting that we do around other topics are transferable to financial socialization. So things like
Mm.
problem solving and critical thinking,
Yes.
teaching those executive function skills, teaching persistence.
Mm.
One thing that I do with my daughter, or that we have done, is this literacy, information literacy and kind of advocacy as a consumer. So
Oh.
she bought a frother because she was really into, she wanted into coffee and wanted to froth some milk,
Oh.
and the frother did not work when we got it. And so we said,
Mm.
okay, you got to contact the company and you got to see what they're going to do for you. And so we've
Yes.
done that a couple of times where we've had her like take a picture of a bad, like a phone case that she wasn't happy with, and just see
Yes.
what the company's going to do for you.
Mhm, and that
And
process, right? The knowledge and the skills and the confidence, right? You're talking about attitudes. The confidence of like, "Yes, I've done that before successfully." Like,
yeah,
that
yeah,
you're providing some of
exactly.
those experiences. Yes.
Right.
Well, I
And
think of some of the explicit things I do talk with my kids about when it comes to, um, money, like financial parenting. Actually, one last night, my daughter left, headphones, which she had recently gotten as a gift. She left her headphones on the floor, like, in her room, and my son stepped on them and they broke. And right, so we did some problem solving around like, "Oh, man, I mean, the headphones shouldn't have been on the floor," right? And so we did some explicit kind of conversations around like, who's going to pay for, like, how are you going to replace these? Are you going to replace these? Do we have money to replace these? But also like caring for the items you have so that you don't have to spend money to replace them needlessly. And then even, yeah, my kids are currently 3 and 6, but like I
mm,
was like, are you guys, you're going to have to problem solve. Are you both gonna have to come up with some money to pay for these? Are you just gonna pay for it? I asked my daughter, like, I mean, they shouldn't be on the floor. That's not a good place for them to be safe. But like, so we did have some explicit, right? Like problem solving, how would we replace them kinds of things. And mostly because we've been talking about this podcast season, so it's on my brain. But so I
mm.
did, even at a young age, there are opportunities to do some of that explicit teaching. And so we're gonna, later episodes this season, we'll talk about teaching these concepts at different ages. But there's opportunities, and so I liked your 3 buckets of like what we're teaching in financial parenting, and then also thinking about it like, are we teaching these explicitly, or some of them are implicitly? So I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
that was great.
exactly. And they're all important, but when we look at people who have high financial well-being, the knowledge piece is important, but really
Mhm.
not as important. They like people have reported that really what's important is knowing how to do things, right?
Mm.
So that's one piece. And then the other piece in terms of like attitudes and confidence, people who are there's been some studies that have been done that have looked at objective financial knowledge. So if I give you a test on credit scores, let's say, or like,
Okay.
what makes
Quizzing
up a
me.
credit score. Um, and and so that's an objective measure, right, of what you know about credit. So if we
Mhm.
have that in a model predicting financial outcomes versus subjective financial knowledge, like Mackenzie, how much do you know about credit? Tell me, and you're like, oh, on a
Oh.
scale of 1 to 10, I'd give myself about a 9.
Mhm.
Well, that
I
confidence
wouldn't,
piece,
but okay.
well, we'll get you there. But so your confidence, that confidence measure is a stronger predictor than objective financial
Mm.
knowledge. And even if you're under, and there's we had a student do a thesis here last couple of years who looked at underconfidence and overconfidence. And so people who are
Oh.
underconfident, they kind of freeze up and don't want to act, basically because they're fearful
Oh.
of making a bad decision, making a bad
Mhm.
move, in terms of their finances. And so that's equally detrimental as like
Yes.
being overconfident actually isn't good either, because, if we look at like an
Mm.
investment, the research on investment behavior, if you're going in and out of the market, or if you think you know more than you do and you're
Mhm.
trying to time the market, like the stock market, or,
Ooh.
that can actually end up costing you a lot of money. And so there's a
Mhm.
little bit of research on that too. So,
Interesting.
so building a confident child is what I would say,
Yes.
that they feel. And again, confidence, self-efficacy financial self-efficacy is something that is studied in my area too, that is basically, I can affect change in my finances. I don't have control.
Mm.
I have control. It doesn't have control over me.
Yes, that
And so if you
belief.
have that confidence and belief that you can make a change, that it's not hopeless, then yeah, then you're in a good place.
All right. That's good to know. So yeah, there's like this self-efficacy piece and yeah, you're talking about the confidence and the benefits of confidence of like
Yeah,
just that belief even if I maybe yeah, if you were quizzing me and maybe I wouldn't score that high, but if I believed like but I am competent and I am capable and I can affect it that there's positive just in that, like the belief that you can do that. As long as it's
exactly.
not inflated, right? As long as it's not like too much.
Yeah, you don't wanna be
Oh,
overconfident.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yep, out of the 3 buckets, that last attitudes and
Yes.
confidence is almost as important as the probably definitely more important than than knowledge, I would even
Yeah.
say, you know?
All right. That's interesting.
Because you can
Well, and
find
so
knowledge,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you can
Well,
find the information. So,
you can
yeah,
go get it, right?
yeah,
We're the
yeah.
information age.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, I am so glad to just like have this conversation talking about like what are all these ideas that go into this? What are the things we are teaching? What are the things we maybe wish should be teaching more? Or yeah, like all of these terms that can inform how we parent our kids related to money. And we're going to dig into more of them right throughout this whole season. But I wanted to take pause in this first episode and be like, what's the research say? Like, why is this so important? You're like, okay, yes, financial socialization, financial parenting, sure, why not? But why? Like, what's the value? What are the benefits or the reasons why it's worth doing? So I actually you sent me so much good stuff, and so I'm reading through these articles, and I couldn't pick just one. I couldn't pick just one like one study or one citation that I was like that covers all of it. I was like, no, they're actually talking about a lot of different things, like a lot of different reasons and benefits. So we have a few little tidbits here. So will you start us with the first one? Like, what's one of the reasons it's worth
Sure.
doing?
Yeah, so this kinda gets into that implicit socialization,
Mm.
right? So it's a study by Shim, who's at Arizona, and colleagues, was at Arizona. When parents practice responsible financial behaviors, their children are more knowledgeable about money use, and they also demonstrate responsible financial behavior. So
Mm.
if you have responsible parents who are responsible about their finances, it's gonna stick with their kids too.
Okay, great. Also, I think it's really cool that like I read these citations. I'm like, yes, so and so, and you're like, no, this is like a human person that you know. I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool.
She's
Oh,
now
so
the dean at Wisconsin, just so you
oh,
know.
cool,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. Okay, so responsible financial behaviors can be passed from parent to child. That's one reason why it's important for us to do that socialization and parenting. Okay, here's another one. In a 2011 study with college students by Solheim and colleagues, they found that students with parents who had that's hard for me to say, poor financial habits, often those students adopted those same poor habits. So the benefits of habits, right, with positive habits is what it sounds like Shim was finding. And then Solheim kind of found the opposite. Like with poor habits, those can also be passed on.
Yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
so these are all quantitative studies and, a lot of qualitative work, and even just in my experience in small group work, when you ask somebody, "Tell me something you learned during your childhood," maybe
Mm.
something your parent or guardian taught you.
Like
Those are
about
some
money.
about money. Yeah,
Okay,
about
about money.
money. Thank you. Yeah. So they kind of, those are just some of the richest conversations, that people
Mm,
it's just so fascinating to hear what sticks with someone from childhood that, they pick up on that either they decide I really wanna like, I had someone tell me, "Oh, my grandmother would write down absolutely everything she was raised by her grandmother, absolutely everything in a book, and then we would, if we wanted to take anything out, we would have to write it in borrow a little money out of this pot, then we would have to write that
mm,
money down write that amount down."
yes.
And then someone else who said that, "Oh, my, parents were just really present oriented, and they spent every dime they got as soon as they got it, and so there were
Mm,
negative consequences." So those are 2 cases where one person said, "This was a really good habit that I'd like to adapt as an adult," versus
mhm,
another one who said, "Gosh, I don't wanna do that," because they knew the consequences of kind of that irresponsible, I don't wanna say irresponsible, but that money
mm.
choice, that they
Yes.
made for the present and not thinking about the future. But we know that
Mm.
future orientation is good for financial well-being, so
So, like, when we can think about and, like, delay for the future benefit, right? That's, like, future orientation is that
yes.
idea, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly, exactly, being good to your
Alright.
future self.
Okay.
So, yeah. So,
Interesting.
what we're doing sticks as parents. That's the
Mm,
point, that I'm trying to
mhm.
make. That
Yes.
I hear it in stories, and we hear it in qualitative research.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alright, so it's
so
worth doing 'cause those habits that we pass on are they're passed on. They like our kids often will take them on. Okay, another tidbit, and I like this one. Felt like this was very strengths based. 2020 study by Stevenson and colleagues. So they were looking at family and finances, and they found that feelings of family cohesion. So basically, like when kids feel like there are people who care about me, I belong here. There's like this level of togetherness in their family. So when there's feelings of family cohesion, that those positively influence someone's social support and their overall well-being, which ultimately has benefits for if they face financial challenges. So, regardless of, right, like not even talking about money habits, not talking about like the quality
Yeah.
of the relationship you have with your child has impact on their financial well-being later. Like
Yes.
how well resilience is a term I've heard you use, like financial resilience, how well they can handle challenges related to finances, like even that. So even if we don't have a lot of money, right? Like a lot of money to pass down to our children, even if we can't buy a lot, right? A lot of like luxury things or whatever that is, whatever our financial, like our income or status is, even just the quality of our relationship can benefit our kids financially in the long term. And I just find that like that gives me so much hope, right? Like I don't have to be getting everything right all the time. The relationship I'm building with them is going to benefit them even in financial well-being.
Yes, because you're and doesn't it make sense? I mean, we're building a
Oh, yes.
foundation, right? If we're warm, if we're affectionate, if we're supportive, if we're not overly harsh with our children, and we
Mhm.
develop a warm, high quality, warm relationship with them, it's gonna spill over into every aspect of their life.
Yes.
You
Which
know, I
that's
mean,
great.
yeah,
That's what we're
yeah.
shooting for.
Yeah, yeah, but the fact that you can link it, you have studies that link it to finances, that's pretty cool, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right. Okay, and
yeah.
then one more. I thought this one was cool too. So not just financial well-being. A 2021 study by LeBaron and Kelly says financial parenting may also contribute to physical, academic, and relational health. So even beyond like when we can help our kids be financially well, maybe that's not like a huge value for you, but likely one of those is, right? Like we want our kids to be physically well or to do well academically or like to have positive relationships. I mean, hopefully financially, as well, but it's going to benefit those other areas, which makes sense, right? Like where we spend our time can affect our relationships, and that can be related to money. Even like activities we can engage in for our physical health. There are some physical like hobby, like I think of like hiking. That might be expensive to some people, or like joining a gym might be expensive, or yeah, even like the education we have access to, or the support for that education. Like those things can be related to money, so it makes sense that the well-being can be beneficial there too.
Yeah, yeah, so, all of those outcomes, health, physical, academic, when we're reading that, what it really makes me think of is that, as parents, again, those general skills that we're teaching them, things like problem solving, critical thinking, literacy,
Mm-hmm.
numeracy, that is gonna be transferable to areas of health, right? Because financial and health behaviors, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yes.
And then academic, outcomes, right? So persistence was something I mentioned earlier, and so a student who's able to persist
Mm,
gets through maybe 2 years of college or 4 years of college, whatever their goal is,
yes.
versus but persistence is a skill, right? That you have
Mhm.
to
That we build.
build, right? To be able to follow
Mhm.
through on things and to finish something and have closure.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
so
Transferable skills. Transferable
yes.
skills.
Yep, that you're teaching when when you're doing some financial socialization strategies in terms of skill building, know that it's
Mm.
gonna pay off in other areas.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, I
Okay,
know,
so
right? We get a
right?
lot of
Oh,
bang for our buck here.
oh, yeah. Oh, man. Okay, in our last season on food, we had a food counter pun. I bet we could get some for
That was
money. I
bad.
bet
I
we
just
could
realized
go,
that.
like, bake for buck. I bet we could do it. Get some good like financial puns in here. Oh, funny. Okay, so we're right. This season we're talking all about financial parenting, financial socialization. I love hearing just like all the tidbits. You're like, yes, there's literature on. I love all that. So glad you're here to share them. One of the things we like to do in our episodes is to kind of come around to this idea of like, okay, you shared some research, shared some examples of your own reality, but like, how is this going to apply to our listeners' reality? And so, one of the things in one of the articles you shared from Cerrito in 2016 talks about the three aspects of financial parenting. And so basically, like, what do we teach? And so they broke it down into content, access, and style. And so I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts and have you explain to listeners what these are. And so we can kind of keep them in the back of our minds here. So let's start
Yeah.
with that idea of content. What's the
Sure.
content we teach?
Yeah, so the content is kind of a parallel to the bucket that is knowledge. What are we
Okay.
teaching? What information are we providing them? What are we teaching? So, for example, how to budget would be an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or teaching them about money. They learn about what currency is, but then
Oh.
maybe bringing them to a more abstract level of what credit is, and then maybe the difference between savings and investing. You talked about uh, the headphones, right? That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
property ownership and
Oh.
treating property, something that you own, with respect, because
Mm-hmm.
you paid, a lot of hard work went into probably, paying for that and making the money to get
Right.
it, right? Having a lemonade stand, there's
Ooh.
entrepreneurship messages, right, in a lemonade stand. So anyway,
Mm.
so how to run so that's content, right?
Okay.
Um, and
That's
then
like the what it sounds
it's
like
the
the
what.
content is like the what you teach. Like it's like the topic basically, right?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
exactly. What do you want your child to know so they can function in the world?
Okay.
Right? So, and it's about again, any variety of topics related to money. The
Mhm.
second piece is access, and so that really reflects the types of opportunities that you're giving your child.
Mm.
And so it could be based on what you can offer
Oh,
them, but
yes.
then you could be very intentional as well. So, but when we talk about access and inclusion in general, like the general field of financial well-being, we're really talking about a person's ability to access credit, to have access to financial markets.
Okay, yes.
There are a lot of barriers that exist that are structural barriers and system barriers for
Mm.
people. So, a lot of people are blocked out of the credit system because of their maybe they've had some previous, unfortunate management of their credit, or
Yes.
maybe they don't have steady income,
Mhm.
so there's certain things that they don't have enough money to put into a deposit to start an account. So there could be a
Yes.
variety of barriers, but so
Mhm.
access, I think, is a really important piece.
Oh,
But when I
yeah.
think about it in terms of financial socialization, the example that I gave for my daughter, that okay, I taught her how to open a bank account, right? And so I
Mm.
have access to a financial bank account. There are some neighborhoods that don't have banks and financial services there
Yes.
because of safety issues, so not
Mm.
everybody has that opportunity, unfortunately. And they may be using different types of financial sectors. So the alternative financial
Yes.
sector would be those things like payday loans, and pawn shops,
Okay.
and that's a viable form of financial service for some communities, because
Yes.
there's not like a traditional institution.
Mhm. Well, that
Yeah.
makes sense, and I think yeah, I think, like, thinking about access from both of those perspectives too, of the opportunities we create, but also that some people are gonna have more barriers, right? Some people are gonna have more barriers to the access to create those opportunities for their kids. I even think of, like, my friends, and yes, I was fortunate that I was able to go to, like, a four-year college and those things, even that, like, I had access to that, but even within some of my friends, like, the access that they had, like, their parents maybe gave them more access to opportunities than I had. I had some friends that had less access to those opportunities. And so that is something we do as parents. Again, whether it's explicit or implicit, we do create opportunities for them to learn. So, okay, so content and then access. Those are two things we teach in financial parenting. And the last one is style.
Style, yeah, so that is how we as parents communicate, financial information with our children and in our
Mm,
family, right? So, think about, friendship and, like,
mm,
disclosure, right?
okay.
And so your closeness with your friend increases with the amount of disclosure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so same thing with parent-child information and financial information, right? Well, okay,
Oh.
let me back up a little bit.
Can
That
be, can be
can be,
related.
can be related. Yeah, so disclosure of, like, what kind of information you share and why is kind
Mhm.
of, one style. But it does foster trust, and it can influence, your parent-child relationship if you do disclose a little bit of financial information, if you are open, transparent, and honest
Mhm.
to whatever degree you're comfortable, right? But
Yes.
everybody has a different level of comfort with how much they're going to disclose and how much they want to share. And so, some people may be avoidant. Some people may have been, their socialization was that we don't talk about money, which a lot of
Mm.
you hear that phrase a lot,
A lot.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So, So that style of parenting, which is related to financial parenting, is how are you communicating about money? Are you
Mm,
arguing about money? Are you expressing stress about money? Are you highlighting the fact that you're working hard for your money? I know, I
yes.
when my daughter was younger, I work because I get a paycheck, and the paycheck goes to spending money on bills, right? And so
Mhm.
ideally we have a little bit left over so that from our needs so that we can go and pay for some wants, right? So
Yes.
these are all conversations that that ideally happen in the household, but it just depends on the parent and the level of communication that they want to share.
Yes. And so a few things that I kind of hear you like I feel like I hear you getting at is this idea, yeah, of like how much transparency you have about money things is like part of your style. But I also kind of hear this idea of like intent
Mhm.
with how you communicate, right? So like your intent when you communicate about like financial topics, because your intent might be to teach your child, right? To help build their knowledge. Your intent, I mean, it could be to like control like a financial behavior, right? Like, oh, don't spend that. It could be even to guilt our child or I think like communicating a value might be our intent, right? Like in order to have enough for what we want, or in order to provide for our family, or in order to save for the future, right? Whatever your financial values are, there's a lot of reasons, like a lot of different kinds of intent that could be a part of it, but that would also fit into style.
Yeah, it would. And
Yeah.
so I would urge parents to kind of do this, listen to themselves as they talk to their kids about money.
Mm.
And when children ask about money, and or even if they ask about buying something, which is what we all get driven
Ugh,
crazy by as
yes.
parents, when you go to a grocery store, it's like, you're going to end up spending more money when you bring your child
Ugh,
to the grocery store because there's
right.
all
They're
this
gonna
great
ask.
stuff, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
how do you say no? Right?
Mm.
And how do you say when do you say yes? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a way of you're communicating all the time. If you just
Yes.
say, "No, because I said so," well, why don't you explain? It's not on the grocery
Mm-hmm.
list this week. But we do,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you used a great example in an earlier conversation about we had this on the list as a snack. We already got it, so
Oh.
we were not gonna buy an additional snack.
Yes,
And
like we
so
chose to put something on the list. Yeah, I think yeah, like literally in the last week, like we are buying crackers as like a snack our family can enjoy this week. We're not also going to buy, I mean, like cookies or pretzels or like we chose something. Yeah.
yeah.
So adding
So
some
you're
reasoning.
showing
Okay.
discipline. So,
Whew,
right? So you're
yeah.
influencing that bucket that's called attitudes, right? And
Mm,
and confidence. So you're showing discipline is something you can exercise as a skill
mm,
and you can teach discipline, but you're also demonstrating it and modeling it, right? You're
yeah.
saying, "No, we're sticking to the list."
Yes. Okay, so we have content, right? Three aspects of financial parenting: the content, the what we teach, the access, the opportunities we create, and then the style, the how we communicate about money are all things that we teach to our kids. Some of the ways we do financial parenting or financial socialization. So, a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff here. And we're going to get like more and more information throughout the season of how we teach our kids, why, what, yeah, why, what, how, I mean, who, I guess. All of them. But this brings us to our first stop, breathe, talk of the season here, Suzanne. So, right, we bring our producer, Mackenzie DeYoung, in. She asks us an off the cuff question. So, what has she got to ask us about financial
Uh-oh, I'm nervous.
parenting?
This is my first, stop, breathe,
Marcy, are
talk.
you ready? I should have asked. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Welcome, first of all, Suzanne, to the Science of Parenting, and welcome to being, oh, what's the word I wanna use? I probably should be nice, but you have to do this. You get to do it. I'm just gonna
Like
be mean
required,
sometimes.
mandatory.
I kind of feel mean sometimes when I just ask, like, random questions, but I actually have a question from Barb today.
Mm,
And she is wondering, as a parent, which of the points of knowledge, access, or style should you focus on like first?
mm,
Or which one is like most important to start early for that like long-term benefit? So with access,
ooh.
knowledge, or style, which one should we start first?
I can tell you which one I feel like I'm doing first. Like since my kids are young, if we're going first by age, like
Mhm.
okay, if we would go by age because since I have littles, I feel like the thing I communicate more often is kind of the style, right? Like the like how I talk about it, when I talk about it. Um Yeah, that I don't feel like I'm always teaching a lot of content yet. Though you're already teaching me, Suzanne, that I do it more than I think I do. Like
Mhm.
I am sharing those values and things more than I think. But I feel like I kind of am. Which of those am I doing first? When they're youngest, it's how I right. It's the choices that I
Mhm.
make and the way they observe it. I feel like. What do you act like? You have a more informed opinion than I do, right? So
No.
what's your take?
So the three, rather than like content, access, and style,
Mm,
can I
or mix
back
it
up to
up.
the buckets of knowledge, skills, and attitudes?
I mean,
Oh.
you can. I still might ask you to answer.
Can I not answer your question? And can I change the
I mean,
question?
to be fair, it is your first
Okay.
time. I should be nice, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what you should be okay, I'll stick to your between I would say between style, access, and content, I would think that style is gonna be
Okay.
the thing that you should think about because it is um your communication's foundational, right?
Mm,
Because you're either implicitly or explicitly communicating about money. And so it could be because the style impacts the content, right?
mm, yes.
And the style impacts, the access in a way. Like,
Mm,
I'm open about money, and so, yeah, I'm gonna let you have a lemonade stand. I'm gonna let you have a part-time summer job.
mhm,
So I would say style because, we can have knowledge and skills, but it's that openness, if you've learned from your like, from your parents to be open, to be, comfortable with money, not be there's no shame around money,
Mhm.
mhm,
not taboo, then you will face the world with more of an open you'll face a financial decision more openly in a way,
mm.
right? Like, I can acquire skills, I can acquire knowledge, but that attitude is a little bit harder to influence once it's right?
Oh,
Once you kind of establish it.
established.
So
Yeah.
that's kinda my off the cuff
Ooh,
thinking. That was a
I
tough
like that thinking.
question.
Okay, but now I wanna know what you were gonna say about the buckets. I now
Well, the buckets are kind of the same thing. It's the
Mm.
at I kinda wiggled my way into answering it the way I wanted to, but,
Fair.
because it's knowledge,
Now you
skills you
got
can
me.
learn, but it's that attitude that as humans, we pretty much have a tendency to, we have a hard time with decisions. We have a hard time being motivated. Let's face it, managing money is not fun and glamorous. There are that
Mm.
small population of people that really dig it.
Mhm.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
And so if you can influence it's that attitude towards it that I think is so important. That if you don't have the motivation to act on your
Mhm.
knowledge and skills because you're paralyzed, because you don't want to make the decision, because you're afraid, you're underconfident, that's going to be pretty detrimental. So I would say, yeah,
Mm.
again, it's the more and more the research is showing it's like personal traits that are more important than even
Hmm,
things like income. I mean, it's
okay.
yeah. So
Hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. I was
yeah.
saying you're gonna have so much. I'm already ready. Like, okay, tell me other things throughout the season. Tell us all the things.
That wasn't the easiest question, and you nailed it, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Wow. So the
Uh,
breathing comes after I answer the question,
well,
right?
When I
it's
leave
kind
you
of supposed to come before. I mean,
No, for me, it was stop, can no longer breathe. No kidding.
oh, I love it.
and then take a breath.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, thanks for
Alright,
that
thank
question, Kens.
you.
I'll say I
Yes.
know you'll have a lot of good ones throughout the season, so we kind of look forward to those. Kind of live in fear of those, but that's okay. So thanks everybody for listening in today. We are just getting started on this idea of financial parenting, financial socialization, thinking about those three buckets, thinking about that we are socialization agents, that we are teaching our kids about money, whether it's implicit, on accident, or on purpose with intention. And so we do. And there's a lot of benefits to why and how that happens, thinking about the things that we pass on, whether we mean to or not, right? And so a lot of good stuff to dig into. And I loved this model of like what are the 3 aspects of what we teach? Okay. Just like Suzanne's 3 buckets, it's like this idea, content, access, and style. So you're going to get even more ways to think about it throughout this season. So we're just starting here, but a lot more good stuff to come, right, Suzanne? Will you
Oh,
tell us what's
yes.
next episode?
I will. In our next episode, we're going to dig a little deeper into the idea of reflecting about what influences our money habits and beliefs. So
Mhm.
that's what we're going to hopefully reflect
Yes.
on as parents.
A little research in there and a little reality of like what influences our money. So awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Science of Parenting podcast. A friendly reminder that you can follow along or subscribe to our weekly audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app so you don't miss anything that's coming out the rest of this season.
Yeah. So come along as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.